The sign of the Son of Man in heaven, part 3. The Lamb as the sign. This is a summary of part 2 in a much shorter video with some added scripture verses and hopefully simple to understand with something added to this episode to connect it with part 4 and so on. Matthew chapter 24 KJV verse 30. And then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven, and then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn, and they shall see the Son of Man come in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. In part 2 of my study, I revealed in my understanding that the slain lamb is the sign of the Son of Man in heaven. That the lamb or slain lamb could be that sign is because there are numerous scripture verses of Jesus as the Lamb and as the Lamb in that future of Matthew chapter 24 verse 30 and beyond that future of verse 30. Among these scripture verses that speak of Jesus as the Lamb set in a future time is Revelation chapter 5 verse 6. As I said in my previous episode of this study, Matthew chapter 24 verse 30 does not reveal what this sign is. We read of the sign in verse 30, but verse 30 does not reveal what is this sign. And nowhere in Matthew chapter 24 is this sign revealed. The slain lamb or lamb could be the sign of the Son of Man in heaven through what we read in Revelation chapter 5 verse 6. Revelation chapter 5 verse 6 KJV. Verse 6, And I beheld, and lo, in the midst of the throne, and of the four beasts, and in the midst of the elders, stood a lamb, as it had been slain, having 7 horns and 7 eyes, which are the 7 spirits of God sent forth into all the earth. Jesus seen by everyone on earth as a lamb in wrath, and a sign, as we read in Revelation chapter 6 KJV verse 15. And the kings of the earth, and the great men, and the rich men, and the chief captains, and the mighty men, and every bondman, and every free man, hid themselves in the dens and in the rocks of the mountains. Verse 16, and said to the mountains and rocks, Fall on us, and hide us from the face of him that sitteth on the throne, and from the wrath of the Lamb. Jesus as a lamb and a sign amongst the church raptured in heaven, as we read in Revelation chapter 7 KJV in verse 13 to 17. Verse 13, And one of the elders answered, saying unto me, What are these which are arrayed in white robes, and whence came they? Verse 14, And I said unto him, Sir, thou knowest. And he said to me, These are they which came out of great tribulation, and have washed the robes, and made them white in the blood of the Lamb. Verse 15, Therefore they before the throne of God, and serve him day and night in his temple, and he that sitteth on the throne shall dwell among them. Verse 16, They shall hunger no more, neither thirst any more, neither shall the sun light on them, nor any heat. Verse 17, For the Lamb which is in the midst of the throne shall feed them, and shall lead them unto living fountains of waters, and God shall wipe away all tears from their eyes. The lamb or slain lamb is likely to be that sign we read in Matthew chapter 24 verse 30 because of these 3 scripture sources of events happening in the future and in that future of Matthew chapter 24 verse 30 with the rapture of the church in verse 31. As I said in my previous episode, Revelation chapter 5 verse 12 with that power and riches and wisdom and strength and honor and glory and blessing has its parallel in Matthew chapter 24 verse 30, coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. This could have as the sign of the Son of Man in heaven in Matthew chapter 24, verse 30, that Lamb we read in Revelation chapter 5, verse 12. But there is also something else in Matthew chapter 24, verse 30, about that sign. There is something hidden in Matthew chapter 24, verse 30, a mystery much greater than the sign of the Son of Man in heaven, something by far even worse than anything read in the book of Revelation from chapter 8 to 19, worse than any wrath of God, worse than the whore of Babylon, and even worse than the beast of Revelation. There is something mysterious in Matthew chapter 24, verse 30, that in its revealment of what it is would be among the reasons to have the book of Revelation understood in the literal sense, for how impossible that future would appear, both for the church and the world. A changing of peoples in something unrecognizable, as if God were to spill all his anger on someone, and at the same time keeping him alive in an emptiness of the spiritually dead, but yet alive, and that spiritual death of its soul be visibly seen to that person and everyone in the same condition, as if the life of a man would be drained dry as a dried branch. A changing of peoples into something unrecognizable, dead in their souls, spiritually but also emotionally dead, but yet alive, and the face of their emptiness of their souls made visible to everyone's eyes. This is end of part 3.